And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. In the midst of Joe Biden's first visit to Israel as vice president, the Israeli government has embarrassed the Obama administration by announcing plans to add 1,600 more homes to a Jewish settlement in East Jerusalem. Biden said Israel's move, quote, undermines the trust we need right now and runs counter to the constructive discussions that I've had here in Israel. His comments were released Tuesday after a meeting with the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, where he reiterated the, quote, unbreakable ties between Israel and the United States. Biden's scheduled to meet with Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas in Ramallah today. This comes as an unusual trial gets underway in Haifa. An American family is suing the state of Israel for the unlawful death of their daughter, Rachel Corrie, a 23-year-old student from Evergreen College in Olympia, Washington. She was crushed to death by an Israeli military bulldozer in Gaza 7 years ago. Today, the Haifa District Court in northern Israel will begin hearing evidence from eyewitnesses to Rachel's death. An earlier internal army investigation exonerated the bulldozer drivers, concluding the soldiers could not see the young American peace activists in front of them. The eyewitness testimony is expected to challenge Israel's version of events with evidence that she was clearly visible to the soldiers standing before the bulldozer in her fluorescent orange jacket. Well, I interviewed Rachel Corries' parents, Cindy and Craig Corrie, and her sister, Sarah Simpson, a few days ago, just before they headed to JFK Airport here in New York to go to Israel. I asked Rachel's mother, Cindy, to go back to those events of March 16, 2003, and explain why Rachel had gone to Gaza to begin with.
In January of 2003, Rachel went first to the West Bank for training with the International Solidarity Movement. It was a Palestinian-led, nonviolent resistance movement to oppose the occupation and what was happening to Palestinians at the time. That movement was founded because there was a resolution in the United Nations submitted by the High Commissioner for Human Rights, Mary Robinson, to have a human rights monitoring force in the area after the start of the Second Intifada, when there was so much killing and violence. And that resolution was vetoed by the United States and by Israel. And at that point, ISM was formed. Some of the co-founders included an Israeli woman, Netta Golan, Americans, Adam Shapiro and Huwaida Aref, Palestinian academic Ghassan Andoni, and others. And Rachel joined that effort. She was trained in Beit Zuhur. She had prepared here before she left. She was studying Arabic. She had done a lot of education, and she was beginning to educate our family because we were new to this issue. She chose to go to Gaza, to Rafah particularly, because she felt that it was maybe the most forsaken part of the occupied territories. It was where she felt her focus and attention was needed. She was there for about 7 weeks. She was doing a lot of things during the time. Part of what she was doing was writing back and informing us about what she was seeing, and her words have since been incorporated into a play, and her writing from there is in a book of her work called Let Me Stand Alone, published by Norton some years ago. But the play My Name is Rachel Corrie is still being seen around the world. Craig and I, just as before we came to New York, saw a reading of it in Tacoma, Washington. We went to a performance in Reykjavik, Iceland last year, so it just keeps moving around the world. But she was working with children and with women's groups. One of the women in Gaza, when we visited there in 2003, was so happy to show me a note that Rachel had left for her on International Women's Day. She wanted to connect women in Rafah with women near our community in Olympia. And so she wanted to start a sister city project between Rafah and Olympia, which people in our community have supported since that time. She was opposing, one of the things that she did was to oppose home demolitions, along with the other internationals who were there at the time to support Palestinians. Human Rights Watch reported that between September 2000 and 2004, over 1,700 homes in Rafah were destroyed. It was mass clearing demolitions, is what the Israeli Committee Against House Demolitions tells us. These were not punitive demolitions. Those were occurring in the West Bank for people who were accused of doing some harm to the Israeli citizens through suicide bombings or some other way. But these were clearing demolitions. And the neighborhood where Rachel was standing, it had been a neighborhood with many, many homes at one point. But these were being massively destroyed to clear a buffer zone and to put in a large steel wall that now largely has come down. But it was standing and was being built at the time we were there in 2003. The home that Rachel stood in front of that day had 2 families in it, 2 brothers, an accountant and a pharmacist, and their 5 young children. Craig and I have come to know that family. We visit them whenever we go. We have communications with them. Part of the family came to the United States. The Israeli government had nothing against this family. They allowed them to go to Tel Aviv in order to get their visa to come to the United States to travel with us in the year 2005. And yet their home was destroyed without any, accommodation of any sort, and under great threat to the family as well. It didn't happen the day Rachel stood there. It happened later that year.
So Rachel standing there that day, what did she decide to do? What happened that day?
I think Rachel knew that Reem and Iman, that Kareem, that those children were behind that wall. She had been helping them with their English homework, and they were helping her learn Arabic. She had slept at the foot of their parents' bed because they couldn't sleep in their own bedroom because of the shots that would be fired through the wall as Israeli military equipment drove past the house. So she slept at the foot of the parents' bed with the other children to offer some international protection to that family. The bulldozer was coming toward their house, and she knew that the kids and the parents were behind her. I don't think there's any way that, I think she also believed that the bulldozer would stop. It had stopped for activists, came right up to them, pushed into them, but stopped at other points during that day. I don't think she believed this was going to happen to her, but she couldn't move because right behind her were these kids and people that she had grown to know and to care for.
And what you understand the bulldozer did?
We have eyewitnesses, 7 international eyewitnesses. We have photographic evidence from all of those eyewitnesses that, according to their report, we were able to read the Israeli military report, which happened in Rachel's case, happens for almost no Palestinians. But there was, because of U.S. insistence, there was a military police investigation. They indicated, though, they didn't use the photographic evidence that the ISMers had. But anybody looking at those photos can see that what the ISMers say is accurate, that the bulldozer proceeded toward Rachel, that she took a position indicating that she was not going to move. She was in her orange jacket. When it kept coming, she rose on the mound, and the eyewitnesses testified that her head rose above the top of the blade of the bulldozer so she could clearly be seen, but the bulldozer continued and proceeded over her. And so that it was covering her body. It stopped and then reversed, according to the eyewitness testimonies, without lifting its blade, so backed over her once again. Her friends were screaming at the bulldozer drivers through this to stop. They rushed to her, of course, and she said to them, "I think my back is broken," and those were her final words. And they squeezed her hands and told her that they loved her. And I feel like she had good people with her.
Cindy Corrie explaining how her daughter, Rachel Corrie, was crushed to death by an Israeli army bulldozer while protecting a Palestinian family's home from demolition in Gaza 7 years ago. An Israeli court is now beginning to hear evidence in the Corries' lawsuit against Israel for the unlawful death of their daughter, 23-year-old peace activist from Olympia, Washington, Rachel Corrie. The trial begins today in Haifa. This is Democracy Now! We continue with Rachel's family, her mother, her father, and her sister in a minute.